Welcome to Sunday's edition of the Daily Pour. My name is Raj Patel, aka the Bourbon Guru. Namaste. So on Sundays, we're not going to do a pour, but we're going to review the bourbons we had in the last week. So if you recall, on Monday, we started the episodes with Fleshman. This is more what we call a dusty. This is bourbon from 1952. In Tuesday's episode, this is where I broke the class. We covered Forgiven, a bourbon out of Wild Turkey, which has a beautiful story behind it. Then on Wednesday, we did RD1, a distillery that started in 2020. And we also covered how you can age your cigars in RD1 bourbon, or if you could do it any bourbon at your home. As you can see, after about 3-4 days, the bourbons have gone. That's because the dry cigars have been sucking that bourbon out of it. It's also got a little cloudy. So in a couple days, I'm going to have to empty the glass, clean it, pour the same bourbon back. I've got a few more weeks to go to age these cigars. Then on Thursday, we covered Eagle Rare. This is kind of what got me hooked onto bourbon, and I'll tell you my whole story around it in that episode. And then on Friday, we went to the Unicorn Bourbon of 2025. In my opinion, that's the E.H. Taylor addition to the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection in 2025. Saturday, we did something unique. I went down to my local liquor store, Benston Liquor. The owner, Fadi, and I ranked our top 5 bourbons under $100, not allocated, so you could go out and make that last-minute bourbon purchase for your family, for your friends, or even your boss. Thank you for watching my videos last week. We had over 3,000 views and just under 200 subscribers. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so. Please share with your friends so I can share with you a unique pour next week, which is a Christmas week. I plan to pour some excellent bourbons and share some wonderful history behind those bourbons. So continue to watch the rest of this episode where we'll go through each of his bottles again. And see you tomorrow for my next pour. Good night. And in the first episode, we're going to pour a unique bourbon, a bourbon that is embedded in the history of so many brands today, as well as so many bourbons today. So come on in and let's look at what we're going to pour today. It's going to be Fleshman's. Many of you know Fleshman as a yellow yeast packet, but Fleshman also for 80 plus years made bourbon. And look at these beautiful little bottles that were served in airplanes back in the day. I wish they would bring this back today with some of the popular brands. So Fleshman, um, in the late 1800s, the Fleshman brothers moved from Budapest to the United States. With them, they brought the family business of making yeast. They moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, and started making the yeast, as well as opened a distillery there, where they were making gin. Then in early 1900s, I believe it was 1902, they opened a distillery in New York. They named it the Fleshman Distilling Company, and at this distillery, they started making rye whiskey and a blended whiskey, which is what this bottle is. So this was bottled in 1952, based on the numbers at the bottom of the bottle. And it's a blended whiskey uh, out of the Fleshman Distillery in New York. Let's open this. So you can see before I open, it's got the tax stamp that many of the older bourbons had. This was the tax that each state collected from the bottle. And then before I open, some of you might notice it's not the original cork. That's because when I opened this first time a couple of years ago, the cork broke, it was dry. And so I always keep all my corks after the bottle's done because you never know when you're going to need it. So let's take a pour. First, cheers to all my friends, bourbon friends. Whatever you're drinking tonight with me. So from a smell standpoint, it's got some fruity smells. I can smell like an orange peel smell coming out of it. And let's give it a... Wow, this is a great bourbon. It's got high fruity flavors. That orange flavor comes through. Very light rye, so it doesn't hit you. It's not as aggressive from a rye standpoint. Again, this is a blended whiskey, not a bourbon or a rye whiskey. Very nice flavors. There's a burst of flavors when you first drink it. Today we're going to do Wild Turkey Forgiven. And again, look at the shape of this bottle. It's different, totally different. And this one does have uh, embossed in the glass their stamp on it too. So again, beautiful bottle. We'll talk. Let's take a pour first, and we'll talk about what's unique about this bourbon. I tried to do this as one take videos, but obviously you saw what happened with the glass. It slipped out of my hands. So we're going to do a two take video this time. Let's talk about this beautiful bourbon that has a very interesting story behind it. So Jimmy Russell's son, Eddie Russell, uh, was working on this day with one of his distillers, and the distiller took a 4-year rye, and this was in 2012, took a batch of 4-year rye and by mistake poured in a batch of a 6-year bourbon. This was the wrong mix or the wrong blend because those were the two, bourbon and rye were never meant to be blended. The distiller thought Eddie's gonna fire him and his career would come to an end. And surprisingly, Eddie forgave the individual and actually named the bottle Forgiven based on that whole experience. And then in 2013, they bottled the first expression. 2014, they bottled the second expression. This is the 2013 edition. It actually, they made it even, they made something bigger out of a mistake. It comes in a nice, beautiful container. And, when you look at inside the box, I do always sometimes have backup. You can see the whole red inside of it. So again, I think Wild Turkey does a great job about packaging their bourbons in beautiful bottles and beautiful packaging. So anyway, let's go back to this one. So remember, this one is a bourbon, which normally has a sweetness, the vanilla flavors, mixed with the rye, which is more the spicy cinnamon flavor. So it brings that combination out. So let's just do a nose test first. And in the nose, I get the citrus feeling. I get a little bit of cinnamon, caramel in it. So I think that's a blend of the two, the bourbon and the rye. Yeah, and this is another great bourbon. It's you get the citrusy notes, you get a little bit of the caramel notes, a definite citrusy notes. But again, this is 22% rye, 78% bourbon. So you're not getting that rye spicy bourbon, but you're also not getting a very sweet bourbon either. It's something in between. I think it's a great bourbon. If you can get your hands on it, you can still find it uh, on online stores. A little bit pricey now than it was when it first came out, but it's a beautiful bourbon with a great story of forgiveness. And to be honest, the outcome was really good. One of my, again, favorite bourbons. You can see there's a lot going from this bottle. So hopefully you enjoyed this second episode of my journey, and we'll see you tomorrow to see what I have in store for you. So RD1, what we're going to try today is their uh, straight whiskey finished with Japanese Mizunara oak as well as French oak. This is one of the highest selling bourbons. I think it's a fabulous bourbon, and 102 proof also. But before we do that, let's talk about how do you age cigars in your bourbon. So first, what you need is an acrylic humidor. Why acrylic? Because if you use a wood humidor, the wood in the humidor is going to absorb the alcohol content from the bourbon. So this is an acrylic. You can buy this from Amazon under $30. And it also has the humidity gauge, so it will give you an idea to keep your cigars at the right temperature. Secondly, you need a little shot glass to put your bourbon in. You need your bourbon. So this is a bourbon actually Dr. Jared made for me. It's a sweeter bourbon, and I ate some cigars a couple months back, everyone loved those cigars, so I'm going to age it again, and then I still have some left, so we're going to age it in there. So what you do is you pour your bourbon in here. Really about an ounce or so. Put it at the base. Uh, Now, ideally, if you have shorter cigars, you can put them all standing upright. Unfortunately, the ones I have, I've got 5 of these here. They're a little bit tall, so I'm going to put them horizontally. So all you do is put this in there, age it for 4 to 8 weeks. That allows the bourbon to soak completely through the tobacco, and it's going to be really nicely aged after, I would say, around the 6 week mark. If you like, you could actually dip the bottom one a little bit in the bourbon if you want to. You could do that also. Just going to throw those two down here, and then we're going to put this up here and put the other cigars in here. You could put more cigars in if you wanted. Keep this closed and leave it for 6 to 8 weeks. Now, what you'll notice is in about 4 weeks, the liquid might have gone down a little. It's going to be a little bit darker, cloudy. So you might want to take that bourbon out and put in the same bourbon for another, the remainder of the time. Keep an eye on the humidity. Make sure the cigars are not dry. You will notice that the humidity is slightly up, more in the 70 to 80% range, but that is normal. When you do take it out after 6 weeks, or you want to smoke a cigar, do keep it outside for an hour and two. That just gives it a little bit of dryness that you need. So we'll revisit this in 6 to 8 weeks and see how the cigars are aging. Again, if you look at this, the cost of this is $30 or less for the acrylic humidor. You can get that on Amazon. A little shot glass you already have, and then you put some cigars in there. So under $30, you can start aging your own cigars. So this one, again, the smells, it's got some interesting smells. I think that Mizunara oak is giving an interesting smell, more of an oaky smell versus fruity. And let's try to give it a sip. Again, it's 102 proof, so it's going to be nicely proofed. My palate is more, over 100 to 110. That's where I like my bourbon. So I think this is going to be right up my palate. Yeah, so this one definitely, you've got some sweeter notes to it. And I think that comes from the French oak. But the Mizunara oak is just giving it a very distinct flavor on the front end. Definitely oaky, really something nice. And I would say it's very different than just a regular bourbon. So I think finishing it in the different woods um, is definitely giving it a very interesting flavor palette to the bourbon. Think back in your journey of bourbon. What was that first bourbon that did it for you, that you really remember today? And he said, I remember that bourbon. So for me, it was back in 2009. Prior to 2009, I enjoyed bourbon at a friend's house. I enjoyed bourbon at a restaurant or a bar, but I really didn't have a collection of my own. So in my last house, we had a smaller bar, and I decided I'm going to go out and buy myself a bourbon. I go to the local liquor store. I buy this bottle, $18. What could go wrong? $18. I went home. I opened that bottle. That weekend, I poured myself a glass, and wow, I loved that bourbon. I remember distinctly telling my wife, Jackie, what a great bourbon it was for $18. It was great bourbon. So, what was that bourbon? Let me introduce you to the bourbon that got me going into bourbon. Let's see. That bourbon was Eagle Rare. So Eagle Rare, something that I started my bourbon journey with, but even today, if you come to my home, you're gonna find Eagle Rare. I still enjoy a pour of Eagle Rare. So Eagle Rare today is made by Buffalo Trace, 90 proof bourbon, aged 10 years. And I think that 10 years is what makes it a great bourbon. Think about where can you have found in 2009 a bourbon for $18 that was aged 10 years? But the other unique thing, this is mash bill number one, which is a low rye mash bill, Buffalo Trace. I'm talking about the mash bill. And another unique thing about this was the barrels were American oak, but they were heavy charred. So that heavy char gave it a lot of ridges, like the skin of a crocodile. And in fact, that char is called the crocodile char. But those dip ridges gave the bourbon a chance to interact with the wood. And that interaction with the wood is what gave it that complex flavors that we experience today in Eagle Rare. So let's give it a taste. And we're going to talk about the taste, but after that, watch the rest of the video because I'm going to talk about the history of this brand. It's fascinating. What was interesting as I opened the cork was I could smell the citrusy smells right off the get-go. And that's interesting because, there's quite a bit of bourbon gone from this bottle, but that smell, the citrus smell is still very strong. So very interesting smells. You can still feel that orange peel smell, but you're feeling also, I get a honey note, a vanilla note, and I think that's because it's Smashville 1, low rye. Let's give it a taste. Yeah, so initially I get that sweet and nutty taste. And I think nutty is coming from the heavy char that's giving more interaction with the wood. The sweet's coming from the mash bill one. But there's a hint of, in the middle part of the palate, there is that little spice that pops up. So really fun. But it's that end also that's interesting. I'm going to have this again to really confirm that ending. So that ending is it starts bringing out the leathery chocolate notes, which again I think the chocolate leathery comes from that heavy char, but the sweetness comes from the mash bill. Again, great deep complex, both in the nose and the palate with this bourbon. Uh, Now let's talk about the history of this bourbon. So this bourbon originally was started in 1975 by a company called Seagram and the master distiller, Charles Beam, who was the great grandnephew of Gene Beam. He created the Eagle Rare brand back then. This is what the bottle looked like. It was actually not a 90 proof, it was a 101 proof bourbon. Really great bourbon. We'll taste it in a different episode. And one thing about this bourbon, so Seagram made this at a distillery called the Old Apprentice Distillery. So the Old Apprentice Distillery still exists today, but it is the Four Roses Distillery. So think about that. We've all been to the Four Roses Distillery, the Spanish-looking distillery. That's where Eagle Rare was made by Seagram, by Charles Else Beam, 101 proof bourbon. Then in 1989, Sazerac bought the Eagle Rare brand from Seagram. Now in 1989, Sazerac did not own a distillery. Think about that today. Sazerac owns a number of distilleries across the world, but in 89, it didn't own one distillery in the United States. So what does it do? It starts making this bourbon at the Heaven Hill Distillery. Till 1992, as many of you know, in 1992, Sazerac bought George T. Stagg Distillery. If you recall, I covered a little bit of that in episode one with the Flashman Distillery and what was going on prior to Sazerac buying it. But in 1992, Cellar buys that distillery, eventually brands that as Buffalo Trace Distillery, and the production of Eagle Rare moves to that distillery. At that time, it was marketed as a single barrel. So think about that. 101 proof, single barrel like Blanton's marketed out there. I think that would have been a phenomenal bourbon. Then in March of 2005, Buffalo Trace changed the brand to a 90 proof bourbon, a batch proof. That's what we know today. 90 proof batch, mash bill number one, great bourbon. It's an awesome bourbon. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this episode with me, and hopefully, you've enjoyed an Eagle Rare in your time. And maybe when having a pour with me today, if not, maybe you should go back to your bar and pull out that Eagle Rare. Cheers, everyone. Today, we're going to explore another part of my bourbon journey. This is where I start collecting the full sets of a particular brand. And we're going to start that with a brand that I love to drink, to enjoy. I love the history of it, and that's E.H. Taylor's Vertical series. So let's look at what this series contains. Originally started with Old Fashioned Sour Mash. This was a 2012 release that was followed by the Warehouse C Tornado. So this is a very special bottle. We're going to cover this in a different episode where the roof of Warehouse C was blown away, and then this was bottled after that. 18-year marriage, another great bourbon. It's a blend of three different bourbons. Still E.H. Taylor's, again, a wonderful bourbon. 4 Grain was a bourbon that was made with the 4 different grains. You got the corn, the rye, the wheat, and the barley. Qdoc, I love this Qdoc version. I know a number of people I know love this expression. Emirath, grain of the gods, is I think very appropriately labeled. If God was going to drink a bourbon, this is a bourbon they would drink. Seasonwood was another great one. And then you had the last release in the Vertical series. These were all released each year, and it was a one and done thing, other than the 4 Grain, which was released in 2 separate years. But the last one of that was this Warehouse C, which is a famous E.H. Taylor warehouse. Now, they have these 4 expressions over here that are released every year. The first one is the barrel proof, uncut, unfiltered. And so this one is at 128 proof. It is the only vertical that is over 100 proof. Everything else in the series is at 100 proof, which is a tribute to the Bottle and Bond Act that E.H. Taylor was very involved with. There's a single barrel, which is one of my favorite of these four. You've got the straight rye, and then you've got the small batch. The small batch, you can get it at the distillery. I would say pretty much every other day. If you go by, you can buy this at its MSRP. Another great sipper. I wish this is something that you could find on shelves at liquor stores, hoping soon. But what we're going to do today is a unicorn uh, pour, and that's the E.H. Taylor BTEC edition. So BTEC Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Never had the E.H. Taylor again. I wonder why it didn't, because to me, E.H. Taylor was a big figure in bourbon. I'm glad this year they released this one. I call this the universe. It was just released this year. Very hard to find and get your hands on. But here we are. We're going to have a little pour of the E.H. Taylor. I am going to sit down with this one because I did not want to drop my glass like I did in that second episode or spill a drop of this bourbon. So it's got appropriate yellow, and the cap has also been uniquely colored with the same yellow coloring. I'm giving myself a little hefty pour of this one. So let's take a little look at the smells. So this is interesting smells. I smell some vanilla, but I'm also getting some baking spice. Maybe on the back end, it's a little bit sweeter, more like a maple, less than a honey, I would say. So I would say more vanilla, baking spice, and maple. And let's give it a little taste. Wow, this is a great bourbon. Uh, again, this was aged 18 years. So you can really see the depth of this bourbon, the quality. I would say in the middle, you get some oaky influence. There's some fruity notes to it, but I see more oak in the middle. Initially, it was a little cinnamon, nutmeg type of taste. And then on the back end, it's really definitely a vanilla caramel. I'm just going to try this again. Yeah, sometimes I like to swirl it in my mouth a little bit more. It kind of elongates the three phases and really gives you the flavors. Like on the back end, I'm still feeling the spicy cherry feeling. So when I did that, the spiciness stayed a little bit longer. Clearly that woodiness, oakiness in the middle, but more sweetness in the beginning. So again, great bourbon. I think Buffalo Trace hit it out of the park with this edition, this release. Let's go in, surprise Fadi, and see what he has got for us. Hey Fadi, how's it going?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good. I'm going to do a little segment this morning. It is the Saturday before Christmas, and if you're looking for a special bourbon, we're going to do a little episode on the top 5 bourbons of my bourbons that are under $100 and readily available, so non-allocated items. So the first one, my all-time favorites, Old Forester 1910. It is for $56, and you can see he's got a whole bunch of them. Um, the second one I would say is a Wild Turkey. This one, the Wild Turkey Rare Breed, and that one is for just under $50. I have a third one right over here, and this is my all-time favorites. All of these are under $24. So if you're buying bourbons for someone new, go to the top floor bourbon. I would say what it's $19, $20. It's $19, $20.
Just came to Michigan about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, and so the foolproof is 125 proof. This is what, $24?
$24. Like I said, like they're roughly $17 to $24.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I have a guy that collects them all.
Yeah, I have a whole collection, and it's something that we all enjoy. By the way, if you like E.H. Taylor, I would say this is the baby E.H. Taylor, same mash bill. What doesn't go in the E.H. Taylor, but in my mind, goes in Benchmark. So it's a great buy. So before I go to my last one, Fadi, what's your favorite?
Ooh, that's a kind of a hard one to kind of decide, especially there's so many different ones. Because we're talking about the Buffalo Trace family. Sometimes finding Buffalo Trace items is so hard, especially the Weller family. Weller 107, everyone loves, and you can't really find them all the time. But I really like to compare it to a Bardstown 106. We call it the Weller killer in a way. 49.96, always available. Great pour. This is actually something I'm gonna gift to you, and I would maybe like to see if you can do a blind between a Weller 107 and a Bardstown 106 and see if which one you can come out with and see if you like more.
I would love to do that, and I love the 106 proof. That's one of my favorite. Anything between 105 and 115. It's a wheated bourbon. I do like wheated bourbon, and I do like Bardstown. If you're ever in Bardstown, the best place to have lunch is at this distillery.
Yeah. They have good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So obviously this is a daily pour, so we're gonna do a pour. Now I'm gonna do a special pour with you today, and it's also going to be from the Neely distillery. These are a few bourbons that are from Neely. They're now available in Michigan. They're $65 each. So this is a Hidden Barn whiskey, and all of these.
Store pick recently?
We actually store pick, and that's what I brought for you.
Oh,
is the two
I was
bottles.
waiting for this.
Yeah. So we have this barrel pick is going to be a unique one. It's going to be what we call a father and son. So there's a full bottle and there's a half bottle that's going to be paired together, and so it's the farther, but one of them is 138 proof.
Oh my god!
So it's going to be really
that.
delicious.
Try some
Yep,
of it
let's
today?
we're going to pour
Right.
the
Which one
the
you want
both
to
or
be
either
first?
one. Let's do that one. That's the bigger one.
All
Yeah,
right. This is gonna be nice. First time they've ever brought Neely store picks to the state of Michigan,
that is correct.
so that's gonna
So
be fun.
those of you who don't know Neely Distillery, they're just 40 minutes north of Buffalo Trace. It's a beautiful distillery.
Cheers.
Distillery. Royce and Rebecca run that distillery. I always love going there.
That's
What do you
great.
think? I'm gonna let you do the.
Get like a butterscotch caramel.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are,
Just a hint of cinnamon
yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
That's right. Wow.
Been good?
So it's such a bourbon
Yeah,
feeling,
yeah.
and but then it just mellows out. What's the proof on this one?
Is it on it? I forget what it
Oh, let's
was.
keep it as a surprise, right?
Yeah,
We'll keep
yeah.
it like
And
that. Oh,
so
this is
this one I
great.
get oaky front, but then more cherry on the back end. Just a hint of spice.
But the flavor just keeps
Yeah,
going.
yeah. It's a
Oh,
very
that's
unique
great.
flavor. And so I was mentioning Neely Distillery. It's a stop that I always make whether I'm going into Kentucky or
Yeah.
coming out of Kentucky. Uh, Royce and Rebecca do a great job. And a very historical distillery. It's a ninth generation of distilling, with the first seven were moonshiners. And they have a really cool story if you go there. But yeah, this was, and
That's
then you want
great.
to try the other one?
Yeah, yeah. We'll let you pour that one.
No,
You
go ahead.
taste it. All
You're doing
right.
such a great job. So also, if you go to Neely Distillery, the other episode I did the aging cigars in bourbon. They inspired me to do that when I was there. They had Gurkhas aged in their bourbon, and they were really nice. If you ever go there, get a one of those Gurkhas too aged in theirs.
I like sometimes seeing the color of these different bourbons, how much they change. Look at that. Cheers
So
on
nice.
that one.
Cheers.
It's 138 proof.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what you guys
You
did.
can smell the proof.
I trusted you guys to go do these barrels,
Yeah.
right?
So this one I said is more of a citrusy nose on it.
Yeah, it's different.
Very different.
Spice, citrus.
All right. You're very high orangey in the
Yeah.
front, but you don't feel the burn for the high
How
proof.
is this 138?
Yeah.